You're listening to the Codependent Millennial Podcast with Sophie Shilo, episode 16, my interview with Vikki Louise. Hi, loves. For those of you with little ones nearby, I'm giving you an explicit language warning on this episode, starting almost immediately. Today, I have a special treat for you. The amazing Vikki Louise from the Fuck Anxiety and Get Shit Done podcast is gracing us with her wisdom and her accent and her amazing laugh. Vikki is an anxiety expert and a life coach who helps women manage their anxiety so that they can live amazing lives. Anxiety be damned. Today, you're going to hear us discussing the evolutionary origins of anxiety, the links between anxiety and codependency, Judaism, the movie of your life, how fun will change your life, how to say fuck anxiety and feel like Beyonce by owning how amazing you are, and so much more. You are about to fall absolutely in love with Vikki, and you're going to love this interview I did with her as well. Just for some context, we're about to dive into our conversation right after I've asked her to give us a little intro into who she is and what she does. Enjoy.
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks firstly for having me. Lovely to be here. So you can probably tell by my accent, I'm not from the US. So I'm English originally, and I am an anxiety coach. So I very much specialize in teaching women about their thoughts and their brains so they can manage their anxiety and procrastination and show up in the world and create what they want to create, because our anxiety and our brain sometimes, has our best interests, but it's built for a different time. So I really want to help people get out of their own way. And it's been a journey myself of going through, and I'm sure we'll speak about this later, but going through the expected route of, working in finance and corporate and climbing that ladder before growing into that choice where I really took accountability for my own life and stepped outside of that world and became a coach.
Yeah, I love that. When you say that our brains have our best interests in mind, but it was built for a different time. Can you tell everyone what you mean by that?
Yeah, totally. So the human brain's been around for, it's been around for a long time, but in its current form, it's been around for tens of thousands of years. And throughout most of that existence, it's been around in times without iPhones, Uber, and, takeaway, let alone, restaurants, any of this stuff, right? Anything that we have right now. So our brain has really been programmed to survive in the wild. And this shows up a lot in terms of anxiety. So a lot of people will come to me and say, I have anxiety, there's something wrong with me. But if we look at the origins of anxiety and what it does, it's like, I call it a survival skill, because our anxiety and the ability to sense potential danger and have our heart rate increase and have blood flow change so that we can run faster, longer, and not feel any pain, basically caused our predecessors to survive in the wild. And it's like everything around us has caught up and our brains are just living in a different time.
Yeah, beautiful. So one of the things that I loved most about the podcast you did about having fun, you said that you like to challenge your fear of failure by looking for the fun, which I think is fucking genius. And you go on in that episode to talk about how the fear of failure takes us immediately out of the present moment. And I know I myself have experienced that. Once I gained some self-awareness, I knew exactly what was going on, and I was like, shit. But I'm sure a lot of people listening haven't given themselves the time to assess what's happening in their brains, so they don't really realize that's what's happening yet. Can you talk a little bit about fun and about the fear of failure and all of that?
Yeah, of course. Again, it comes down to fear of failing what? Like in our modern day world, so what if you fail? I failed my driving test 5 times. Right? So what? I failed so many things in my life. And when it comes to even like job interviews, first dates, relocating to a new country, closing down your first business, whatever it might be, like failing itself is fine. We survive failure. And then in terms of having fun along the way, it's like I always think like we don't know if we have more than one life. We don't know what happens afterwards, but we do know we have this one, and we create it and we create fun. And there's like a saying that goes, life is what happens when you live at the edge of your comfort zone. That's where we're creating possibility.
Yeah.
Creating failure, probably, and also creating fun, right? Because our brain wants us to sit on the sofa, watch Netflix, order pizza, and like spend our like 80 years on this earth like that. That's what our brain is programmed to do. But that's not really fun.
No. And that's not really a recipe for a fulfilling life at all. It'll technically keep you potentially safe.
Yeah.
If we mean alive, but also like, what kind of a life is that? That's not a life that any of us would probably actually consciously choose.
Yeah, I don't know if I shared this in that specific episode or if you heard the episode where I spoke about this, but I watched a movie once and it said the idea of hell was, being trapped watching the movie of your life over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it really stuck with me from quite a young age, where I was like, if the worst case scenario is me watching my life over and over again, I really want to make it a good movie. I want it to be great.
God. That's so good. I want it to be great too. You want to be watching a good movie. Yeah. So, you and I came here today to talk about the intersection between people pleasing and anxiety. Yes. So I want to know about what caused you to first delve into this work in the first place. When did you realize people pleasing was an issue for you? And tell us a little bit about your journey away from that.
Totally. I think one of the things that I speak about in a lot of my work is like, of course, people pleasing exists with every single human on this earth because it's programmed into us from a young age. When you were the moment you learned to speak, you were told to be quiet or to have manners or say please and thank you so people will think you're well behaved and not scream. And we're from a young age, we as children, or we are now telling children to behave and speak and act in certain ways so other people will think certain things of them. Mm-hmm. So for me, it wasn't necessarily a conscious problem. It was just the norm. I just accepted it. That was how the world ran. And other people, you have to do things that make other people feel better, whether it's your parents or friends or a teacher or a boss, whatever it might be. That was, to me, how the world worked. I was like, okay, and you have to have people like you and you have to make people feel good and all this responsibility that I was really putting on my shoulder. Mm-hmm. The work for me began actually with anxiety. I didn't even realize that I'd had anxiety throughout my whole life until 2 years ago now. I was waking up every morning with panic attacks and I thought it was just normal until my partner was like, I don't think this is okay. And then I started a friend actually from America. One of the big things I say is like, in the US, you guys are much more advanced and open about these things. And I was growing up in England anyway. Yeah. So she was like, it sounds like panic attacks and anxiety. And I was like, no, because everything that I'd heard about that was such a big deal that I wasn't, that wasn't what was going on with me. I was functioning, I was working, I was doing all these things in life. Anyway, obviously, as I was doing my research and getting sucked into all the information, that's exactly what was going on. Mm-hmm. And probably, as you know from your own experience, these two things come really hand in hand. So when you're looking at the symptoms, I mean, social anxiety is people pleasing. What's the difference?
Exactly. When you were talking about that, something dawned on me in a way that it never has before, which is so funny. I mean, when we're doing this work, it comes to us in waves. Yeah. But when we think it's our job to control everyone's perception of us, of course we would have an anxiety disorder. Like if mm-hmm. we think that, number one, we can control other people's perception of us and other people's feelings. And then if we take that on, that's just a recipe for anxiety and for panic attacks, like, because it's impossible. There are too many people. we can't be that many different iterations of us to please everyone. And that just, my God, I'm imagining myself several years ago getting so much comfort from hearing that, like, oh shit. Okay. That actually shines some light on what I'm feeling.
Yeah, totally.
So you realized you were having maybe a less than ideal experience in your life because of your anxiety and your urge to people please. So how did you first start to take steps to remedy that?
So I was already a life coach, and I was a startup founder. I had a tech company at the same time, and I was actually getting a lot of panic attacks related to like work and all around that area. So like entrepreneurship, I always call it the lazy way to self-development, because it's so exposing. You can't blame your boss, you can't blame your hours, like it's all on you.
Yeah.
So that was definitely what was happening for me at the time. And there were a few key moments where I just stepped into things in a way that I hadn't thought about doing because I didn't have the time to do it. So one of them I speak about in my first episode, which is presenting to a big fund. And, you know, my brain was like, we're going to die. Don't go, don't speak, don't go on the stage. Yep. And I didn't have time to, you know, get my thoughts together and put a thought download down and separate out my emotions and understand what was going on. My body was like, you're going to die as I was walking. And I had no choice but to lean into it and feel it. So instead of fighting it or resisting it or rejecting it and judging myself through it, I just let it be there. And this moment just sticks with me so much, because once I let it be there and I experienced it in my body, and I was like, wait, this is just my body trying to keep me alive because it thinks I'm going to die. This is an amazing skill. This is like a superpower. I remember thinking, like, I'm fucking Beyonce right now. Like, I was on fire because I felt and owned what my body was trying to do instead of rejecting it. So that for me was when I was really like, wait, I want to focus and do my work around anxiety. Like, this is the area. There's a way to crack this. Like, our whole dialogue around it, and a lot of the dialogue around it in the media is like, and even in my research is like, I think irresponsible and provoking and isolating for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
that's such a fantastic story. I love that. And I think, you know, how beautiful that you were trapped and you had to feel what you were feeling and you had to lean into it. There was no choice. I mean, you could melt into a puddle on the stage, but that wasn't an option.
And I could run out.
You could run out. Exactly. You could run off the stage. You totally could have done that, but you didn't. You felt it. And it's like, so many times I feel like we sometimes have to just force ourselves into this one position that is so painfully uncomfortable that we think we're going to die. We just have to force ourselves just to convince us that we're not going to die. Like, you actually can handle this. And then from that point on, it's like, whenever we're like, okay, I need to feel these feelings, it's like, all right, I've done this once. I thought I was going to die. I proved to myself that I didn't. I can do this again now.
Totally. And this is why it comes down to what we were saying earlier about failing. Why do I encourage people to fail so much? Because the more you do it, the less of a big deal it becomes. So you can fail asking for, what was it called on a plane, an upgrade. Like, okay, you failed. You're still going to get on the plane home. Like, the worst case scenario isn't so bad. Even though for a lot of people, the idea of going up to the counter and being like, hi, do you have a seat in first class? Can I get a free upgrade? Is like, well, why would I do that? They're going to think I'm ridiculous. Who do I think I am? Blah, blah. Like, okay, so what? That person literally isn't going to think about you once you've left. They're not going to be like, what? Like, Vikki Yaffe in seat 32B asked to be upgraded. How rude. And, you know, make their week about it. But you learn that by doing it, because our brains sometimes don't really understand that asking for a free upgrade or a free cup of coffee isn't the same as taking risks. Like, oh, I'm just going to try this berry in the wild and see what happens. Or maybe I can take this lion on. Let's just like get into a fight and take our chances.
Oh my God, Vikki, that is so good. I'm just going to try this berry in the wild and see if it poisons me. That's the same thing. That's what we're doing. And our brains don't know the difference yet. Can I
Yeah,
tell you the silliest story in the world?
please.
So when I was little, I mean, my God, I mean, not even that little. I was probably 10. So I should have been old enough to be doing this at this point. But my mom wanted me to, she was parked in the parking lot. We were like going to the post office or something. And she wanted me to run into the store and buy a gallon of milk to save time while she was in the post office.
Mhm.
I was petrified straight up. The thoughts in my head were, I'm gonna die. And I was generally an outgoing child, like very, just, very outgoing, very comfortable generally in life. I could not go into the store and buy this fucking gallon of milk. And my mom was so patient with me. She just sat with me and was like, talk to me through it. And she's like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Like, why are you so scared of this? And I was like, they're going to think I'm an orphan.
Oh my gosh. Wow. There you go.
So crazy. She was like, what?
Yeah.
So once I was able to like see that and see how silly it was, I like went in and bought the fucking milk. But it's still a joke that we have today. She's like, they're going to think you're a little orphan.
Yeah. Like that was your big fear as a child.
Exactly. Yeah. To just identify the thoughts you have that like, once you become aware of them, you can easily just regain control. Like, all right, brain, I see you're having these thoughts, but I know that I don't have to think everything that you think. Like, I don't have to believe everything that you think. Like, I'm going to take back the reins for a second here. We're going to go do this.
Totally.
Yeah. Oh my God. Just so funny. So we're both Jewish also, which is fun, which I want to talk about a little later. One thing, we'll talk about the whole Jewish thing, but I first want to talk a little bit more about entrepreneurship because I also own another company. Mm-hmm. And I did before I became a life coach. And I'm so glad that I did because you said that entrepreneurship is, the lazy path to self-development. And I totally agree, except I would strike the word lazy from there. I mean, my God, I didn't really realize when I started my company that it would push me to become the person I had always wanted to be and never thought that I could be.
Yes, that's why I call it lazy, because you have to grow.
You have to, exactly.
Yeah, you're not like, oh, maybe I'll do some personal growth today. You're like every day, super self-exposed. You can't do anything but grow. That's what I mean by lazy. It's like the opposite of lazy.
It's so true. Yeah, it's all day, every day. And you're forced to do it because if you don't, you'll go out of business in a minute. God, it was just the best surprise. And I found myself recommending entrepreneurship to people who didn't really want to have businesses, but they needed to like give themselves a kick in the butt. I was like, you know what? Start a company. You'll transform and then you can
do this easy thing.
It's so funny.
Amazing.
So you pretty much had the same experience, right?
Yeah. So also I
changed you.
Yeah, totally. So entrepreneurship and relocating are the two things that I say are like plucking yourself out of your comfort zone and dumping yourself deep in that deep end. And you've got no choice but make active decisions on purpose. And I think that's really where the growth comes from. Is in business, it might be setting your own schedule, your own hours, your own niche, your own products, your own supply chain, all that side of things. And in relocating, it comes in, actively going out there and building community and finding friends and building a life for yourself on the social front. So both of them are very exposing because you actively have to make choices and step up and fail, right? Like you have to go and make a friendship that doesn't last to go and make a friendship that does. You have to go and, hear a no from 5 clients before you hear your first yes.
Yep, exactly. Mm-hmm. And another aspect of both travel and entrepreneurship is regardless of which areas in life you feel confident in versus maybe a little less confident, both travel or relocation and entrepreneurship will challenge you in every area. So no matter where you need to grow, they will push a button somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, it's inevitable. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyone listening is like, I was going to start my own business and relocate, but now I'm not.
oh God, no, you guys do it. Trust us. Do it.
Trust
Right?
them.
Wouldn't you do it all again?
1,000,000 times.
Exactly. A million times. And it's like, it's so funny. I think about this and during my entrepreneurship journey, I've thought about this during the hardest times. I knew even when, and my God, I won't go into it, but as you know, there are some really, really hard times when starting a company. But even in those moments, I had this sort of bird's eye view of, do I want to choose this? Would I do this again? And the answer was always yes, because I could feel the growth happening even during the most painful times.
That's amazing. And I think even the fact that you knew to ask yourself that question came from being an entrepreneur, because
Yeah.
a lot of my friends, I love them, a lot of them that are lawyers are still lawyers, even though they would say that they wouldn't go back and choose that again. But now they've been doing it for 10 years, they're still doing it. So I think even the fact that as an entrepreneur, you have to ask yourself that question, because it isn't smooth riding and you are constantly in that driving seat in a way where you have to decide all the time that you're going to keep doing it.
Yep, exactly. And one more piece about the failure. So I learned so much about failure from two of my all-time favorite teachers, Ramit Sethi and oh my God, Dr. Aziz. What is his last name? I can't remember his last name because he goes by Dr. Aziz, but he wrote the book. I think it's just called Saying No. God, I read it so long ago that I can't even remember, but it's still on my phone because I go back and listen to it every once in a while. Do you know the book I'm talking about?
No, but that's so funny because my podcast topic next week is Saying No.
Oh, good. That's so good. I cannot wait to listen to it. But anyways, just those two teachers really helped me get comfortable with failure. And I wanted to loop back around to that for a second. Ramit Sethi recommended one time to keep a running log of all of your failures and celebrate them, and celebrate when you get to 100. And so every time I have a massive failure, I put it in my notes app with little champagne bottle emojis all around it.
Yes.
Celebrate my failures. And it changed my fucking life.
Yeah.
Changed my life. It was just, it's like a spiritual practice, my champagne emoji failure list.
It sounds fun.
I love it so much. Okay, so let's go back and talk about our religion. So we're both Jewish. I want to hear about your experience in, comprehending anxiety and people pleasing from a Jewish perspective. I think it's something that a lot of people wonder about. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your thoughts about that.
So I think when you are in any kind of community, and it can be a religious community, it can be a community based around different cultures and different nationalities, or even sports, right? Like we have all these cultures in the world, and with culture and community comes an openness and a dialogue, and you end up forming in groups like what is a norm, a cultural norm. So if the cultural norm in your culture is to be married at 25 and you're not married at 25, then you start to think at 24 that there's something wrong with you and it's never going to happen for you. And you've just suddenly gone away from this cultural norm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this is where I think people pleasing comes into play, of like wanting to be liked by the crowd and accepted by the culture and adhere to the standards that are like you've been born into, or even if we think of university, even like the friends that you make, any crowd that we make. But in Judaism, I don't know how it was for you, but for me, like my friends and I, like we were all smart, we worked hard, we were in relationships quite young. I thought I was going to be married at 22, true story. And it was just like a very comfortable community thing. But I remember growing up and hearing like everyone knew each other's business. Like people knew each other's business. People knew if you were dating, who you were dating. People knew if you broke up. People knew what university I was going to, what my job was. Like part of being in a smaller community is amazing because you get so much care and so much love, but part of it is also a lot of involvement. That was my experience. What was your experience?
Yeah, I relate a lot to that. The community aspect in a lot of Jewish communities, and definitely in the one that I grew up in, was incredible. It also felt, I know as a child, it felt very isolating because you're with this community of people all the time. You see them very, very often. And it's kind of awkward if you're not happy. And it's, kind of awkward if your family isn't happy and if there are rifts or whatever. And, it was just, I just fell into, I'm an older sister too. And I think I fell immediately into, once I was like conscious enough to be making decisions about my behavior, fell into a pretty hardcore caretaker role for everyone in my family. And it was, I was a people pleaser from the time I can first remember having memories. Like, it was very early on. I have vivid memories of, my God, ridiculous stuff. I like lengths that I would go to even at 4 and 5 years old to affect other people's emotions positively. And, looking back at that now, it's so helpful to see how different patterns were formed, because now I'm not in this vacuum anymore. It's not a mystery to me anymore. It's like, okay, I can clearly see how I developed this way, why this happened, and I can choose differently if I want to. That awareness was a blessing. And I think also it's funny, you mentioned, you and your friends were hard workers and you were smart and intellectual and whatever. I think that's a huge part of the Jewish identity is education, and, books are our most prized possession, and learning is the most important thing you can do with your time besides having babies, which I still don't have. And so that's a whole
That's so funny.
You know what I mean? But
of course, we're learning. That's like what the super religious people, that's what they do all the time, is learn. And it's funny because I still apply that to my life, even with coaching and anxiety and all my research. Still, part of me thinks I chose this career, obviously, because I want to help people manage their mind, because I really believe that's the key to like solving everything in the world and creating an amazing world, but also because it's a job and a career that is requires constant learning.
Exactly. That's the most Jewish thing about you. Yeah.
Amazing. I also wanted to ask, if you don't mind, I would love to hear a story of like an early memory of you people pleasing.
People pleasing? Oh God. Yeah. Okay. Get ready for a highlight reel. It's like so funny. So I think one of the earliest memories, I was 4 or 5, I think. And my parents had been fighting, and we lived out in the country, and it was a beautiful home with beautiful land and blueberry bushes and apple trees. And it was just fucking so idyllic. And they were fighting so much, and I felt so terrible about it. And so my sister and I prepared this little meal, and we like picked berries and put them on these grape leaves because we had tons of grapevines growing, and we set up little tea candles because we knew where the matches were for the Shabbos candles, and all of this stuff. And so we sat them up on the porch. We had like a second story porch on at the back of our house. And so we set this whole adorable little scene for them to just have some private time, have a little date.
Oh my gosh, you guys are so cute. What? That's amazing.
It's adorable, but it's also heartbreaking because it's like, well, shit, that was I didn't even know the kinds of behaviors that I was setting myself up to participate in later in life as this habit just got worse and worse, So that's just one example. And then that just, snowballed from there, really. And I don't necessarily think it had anything in particular to do with being Jewish, but I can definitely see how Judaism and how that close familial tie and like the prioritization of keeping a family together would exacerbate that.
Yeah, and also isn't that the most beautiful example? Because people pleasing in our head, for any of us, like people pleased at some point, we think it's about pleasing the other person, right? We're like, I'm going to do this so they can stop arguing and they can have a nice night. But really, it always comes back to pleasing ourselves. I'm going to do this so that I can feel better about my parents arguing and feel confident that they're going to be together because I don't want them to. Like,
exactly.
That's the loop that we create.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Did you just say loop?
Yes.
Yes, that goddamn so good, Vikki. That's it. When we create that feedback loop in our minds, that association between I can fix this, this is something within my control. When I do fix this, I feel better. Therefore, I should keep trying to do this in the future. That is toxic. We're setting ourselves up for, number one, a life based on total lies, because nothing that I could have ever done could have, changed anything that happened with my parents. But, and yeah, I think going back to something that we have yet to mention on this recording is that people pleasing is selfish and dishonest. I didn't, I didn't, as a 4-year-old, I didn't have the wherewithal to say, you know what, I am having some trouble processing my emotions about the reason why you guys are fighting all the time. Can we talk about this? How can I process my own emotions so that I'm fine, whatever happens with you guys? But as we grow older, we don't recognize that behavior is disordered. And so we're not able to have the emotional maturity and awareness to say, this tendency to want to make everyone else happy around me is about my unhappiness. I need to work on that.
Yeah, but isn't it also interesting, because if you think about society and upbringing, we kind of are almost half taught that we can make other people happy. I feel like that was the biggest thing for me, was wait, I'm not responsible for making other people happy. Because when it came to family events or getting good grades or going to a good school or getting a good job and being oh my God, everyone's so happy. Everyone's so proud. But those moments where you are happy for someone else in their situation in their life are temporary. If you are trying to ever make your mother not worry about you, you're going to fail. I feel like no matter what I do, I'm okay, I'm going to have the stable job and the career she wants, and the long-term relationship and X, Y, Z, and everything's all set up for this great life. That she'll always find something to worry about. I love her, but she'll always find something.
Yeah.
And so I might as well show up in the world how I want to show up. And then actually what happened when I started to do that was she worried less, or maybe I just noticed it less because I stopped caring.
Yeah.
But the other people's thoughts are always a reflection about you, are always a reflection of themselves, their own lives, their own worries. Yeah. And so we can never please anyone else.
Yeah. Everyone just rewind 30, 45 seconds and listening to everything she just said 7 more times. That's the fucking universe right there. And I think another thing you just said, which, God, there are so many gems here. I love talking to you. You said that we're really taught and conditioned by society to believe that we can make other people happy, and that, with the career and the degree and the marriage and whatever, we're also taught that we can successfully find happiness in outside things, which is the biggest fucking scam of them all. It really is. We're taught oh my God, it's just, I feel like it's this dangled carrot in front of our faces when we're just running and running and running, and we're the next degree, the next highest paying job, the next promotion, the next relationship, that is what will bring me happiness. No, honey. No.
Yeah.
It is always an inside job. None of those things will ever feel fulfilling if you're not fulfilled internally. And we don't know that until we reach this point where we're fuck, I've accumulated all of these shiny stars. Why do I still feel terrible? That's, I think, when the real work begins, when you start to ask the real questions of, okay, what's this really all about?
Totally. And I think, but the truth is, I think so many of us for a long time don't even know that that is a question. We just think that we're still doing something wrong. Like there was a time when at my coaching business, my startup, I was doing an MBA and learning a language, learning Hebrew actually. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What do you think is going to happen by doing all these things at the same time? Right? Like, is this really the secret to feeling proud of yourself? Because what I learned instead was I get to be proud of myself without any of that.
Yeah. How did that feel to think? And did you realize that you got to feel proud of yourself just if you decided, or did a coach tell you that? Was that a realization? What happened there?
I mean, I definitely do a lot of my own coaching and have worked with coaches, but that point, there was a point in time where it struck me, and it was like one of those late evenings in the office, and I was like, I don't think that this is going to be any different than all the different previous like qualifications and certifications and degrees that I got before. And like, when does this really end? Like, when do I want this to end? And then I realized that I just had that choice. And it's funny because I actually stopped learning Hebrew because I didn't really want to at the time. And I still did my MBA, but I just enjoyed it so much more. It was just like fun.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun because you realized that you weren't putting it up on a pedestal as the thing that would make you feel whole, or what?
Yeah, it was fun because I didn't need anything from it. It was just going to be like, I was just doing it for fun.
Yes, you didn't need anything from it. And isn't that how relationships are too?
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. Yeah.
It just feels so good when you can release this expectation of the other person, either in a platonic or a familial or a romantic relationship, when you can release that need for the other person to be something in your life that will like fulfill you, and they can just be them.
Totally.
The MBA can just be the fun MBA.
Yeah, and it's actually funny because I got married a few months ago, and we met like...
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. And we met 3.5 years ago when I'd been in Israel for a week, and he was totally inappropriate because he was like, we were just never going to get married. And so we were just having fun. And because we were just having fun, it was like the best relationship ever. And we fell in love instead of, I feel like when I came to it from when I was dating before in London, I was very much like, are you husband material? Are you not? If you're not, I'm not going to date you. And because I was on vacation, I was like, yeah, fine, I'll just have fun.
That's amazing, Vikki. I love that. You know, one of the other questions you posed in the fun episode was, what if all you had to do is have fun? And I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap up with in this interview. What if all you had to do is have fun? Now, when I asked that question in my like non-managed mind, which is riddled with like anxieties and fears, says, well, that's absurd. That's irresponsible. That's all kinds of things. You know, there's like a million red flags with that. But if I tap in, listen to my higher self, it's like, oh shit. That sounds like a nugget of truth. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? What if all you had to do is have fun?
Sure. Yeah, I think firstly, fun pulls you very much in the present. So you're not overthinking the past and you're not projecting into the future and things you can't control and worrying too much. So when you are just here and just showing up to have fun, you let go of any expectation or need from whatever it is, whether it's a person or a job or career or even a country to live in. And I think one of the most challenging things for our generation is being truly present. When you're just looking to have fun, that's kind of like the trick. You're just going to be present.
That's beautiful.
Secondly, when you're just looking to have fun and you're not taking yourself too seriously, you show up as your most authentic self.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's what creates the better relationships, and that's what creates the better work-life balance, and that's what creates a better business and the better clients. And all this is like you being your authentic self. But when you are worried about X, Y, and Z in the future, or focus about what didn't work in the past, you're not having fun, and B, you're probably well, you're definitely not in your own comfort and confident skin.
Yeah, I agree with that 110,000%. And I actually think my experience growing up in Judaism affected my ability to have fun, which is hilarious because fun and laughter is a very holy, important thing in Judaism. But, you know, I come from Holocaust survivors. And so I think there's a huge cultural pressure to, I mean, Jews have a certain severity to them. Like, we are serious people in a lot of ways. And fun has been challenging for me in a lot of ways because there's always something in my mind about tikkun olam and trying to improve the world around me and being involved in humanitarian efforts and activism. And there's some sort of injustice that always has to be tended to. And that will immediately pull me out of any experience of fun I'm having in the moment, you know, any sort of like presence. But I think that it's a lie that you can't have both.
I was just going to say, I think the solution is absolutely to do those things together.
Yeah, it has to be simultaneous. There's a friend of mine who's an incredible activist, and she says, if there's no dancing in the revolution, then I don't want to be a part of it.
What? That's your friend's quote? That's an unbelievable quote. Are you serious?
That's good. Yeah, she's incredible. But I just love it. And I agree so much.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that quote. If there's no dancing in the revolution, I don't want to be part of it.
Yeah. It's magical. Oh, I have chills now. Okay. Vikki, is there anything you want to leave us with? Are there any, you know, for people listening, is there anything you want last words to tell them about fun, about anxiety, about people pleasing, about fear of failure?
Yeah, the one thing that I would say, we've covered a lot of topics today. The first step before you can like get to this place of managing your people pleasing and managing your anxiety is really managing your judgment around it. So fine if you're anxious, fine if you are aware that you are people pleasing, fine if you're aware that you are not having fun in that moment because you can't get out of the future. But what happens after that is really, we start to think, what's wrong with me? It's not working for me. I can't do this, blah, blah. Like that layer is completely not necessary. Like it's supposed to be a challenge. It's called growth for a reason. So being able to observe where you are right now without judgment is like such a powerful first step. So I really encourage you to just like let yourself be human first and foremost. Just be human. That's it.
I like that. I appreciate having the permission to just be human. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. I think that's a really helpful thing to say.
Yeah, in a world of like Instagram, I always say like we compare our lowest moments to someone's like favorite 15 seconds of their week with like an Instagram post. It's like, just let yourself be human. I promise you, behind every Instagram post is just another human with another brain that has been pre-programmed by the same experiences that your brain has been pre-programmed with. Like that's it.
That's so valuable. Vikki, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. You're incredible.
Thank you so much.
So again, Vikki, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I absolutely loved speaking with you and learning from you. If you want to learn more about her, you can visit her website at vikkilouise.com. That's VIKKILOUISE.com. You can also find her podcast on any podcast platform by searching F*CK Anxiety. It'll come up. Her podcast name is Fuck Anxiety and Get Shit Done, both with asterisks. But if you just search F*CK Anxiety, the podcast will just populate in the search box. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Our very next episode will be with a good friend of mine, Rebecca Gwozdziewicz. She and I will be discussing privilege, guilt, gratitude, loneliness, codependency, a ton of good stuff. You do not want to miss that episode. Until then, I hope you have an amazing day. If you liked what you heard on this episode, join me over on Instagram at Codependent Millennial for more tips on moving beyond codependency and building a life you truly love.